Hi, everyone. Well, Reverend Larry's gone and done it again. She's invited me back. This is her friend, the other Reverend Larry from Tidewater, Oregon. And it's my pleasure to fill in for her while she's on a well-deserved vacation. She's asked me to talk about the idea of dreaming big, and it's from the journal that you've been using. And the entry for today is on dreaming big. So, where shall we start? I think a bit of curiosity is in order. I'm curious, how many of us are still dreaming at all? Are you? Some days I wonder about myself. When I was a kid, I had so many big dreams. It was like every idea I ever had could be blown up into a big deal and an important deal. I was going to be a teacher and make a big difference. I was going to take on big corporations who had um, caused trouble in our small town. I was going to stand up for the people who had lost their own voices. Didn't you have big dreams like that? So what happened? Well, I started to take the path of least resistance. I settled for good enough. I started listening to other people's dreams instead of understanding my own. There are people who will tell you that's the way of growing older. We find our place and we stay in it, and we don't need dreams anymore. But I'm here to tell you something. The good enough is the enemy of the great. And let's put that in perspective and a little bit larger. The good enough life, the satisfactory life, is the enemy of the great life. And I'd like to maybe start with a joke, if you don't mind. So, dressed in winter coats, hats, and boots, an old man and his grandson were walking on the beach. The boy was small for his age and walked with a limp. Suddenly, a giant wave crashes on shore and sweeps the boy out to sea. The man looks up to the heaven and cries, "Oh Lord, this is my only grandson. How can you take him away from me like this? My son will not understand. My daughter in law's heart will be broken." But the fellow remembered his scripture, right where it said, "Ask and ye shall receive." And so he decides to ask God to return the boy. He gets on his knees and prays. Suddenly, another wave, even larger, comes by and deposits the boy right back at the old man's feet. The grandfather looks to the heavens again and says, "Hey, wait a minute. When you took him, he had a hat." Okay. All right. Well, maybe it was a funnier when I was practicing. Anyway, let me talk about this joke for a minute. The joke illustrates an important metaphysical teaching. We tend to only ask for what we see and we can imagine. I mean, why didn't the grandfather ask to have his grandson healed, right? Why didn't the grandfather ask for money for his family or whatever? He couldn't see behind something that imaginingly had been taken away, the hat. So I think we're working on our hat. We're only looking on the things that we can receive. And to illustrate that, I'd like to tell you about a teenager that was in my care. So for many years, I had the honor of being a foster parent for the Boys and Girls Aid Society in Oregon. And primarily, I focused in on teenagers. And so I'd like to tell you about one of the teenagers that I got. As often happened, I would get a phone call at midnight, and someone on the other end would say, I'm a juvenile officer, and we're over at the detention facility, and I'd really like to give this young man a better chance than locking him up here at juvenile hall. Would you be willing to take him on for a few days until we can find a relative or someone who can look after him properly? And so I said yes. And within about an hour, I had a young man on my porch, and I showed him around the house and made him a snack because he hadn't eaten anything. And I showed him his room. As a foster parent, of course, each kid would have their own room and their access to a bathroom and so on. It was a nice setup, really. And so I left him in the bedroom and I went upstairs to go to bed myself late at night. Well, about 2 a.m., I hear a noise downstairs, and I can't quite figure out what it is. It doesn't sound like the boy talking, but it is talking. And so I come downstairs and I look in his room. The bed's been not slept in at all. And so I turn the corner and the noise is coming from the living room. And there he is, sound asleep on the sofa in the living room with some kind of weird late night talk show going on the TV. So I turned off the TV and quietly woke him up and I said, "What's wrong? Why weren't you sleeping in the bed?" And he looked at me and he said, "I have never slept in a bed before and it just doesn't feel right. And I'm also used to a lot of noise where I usually stay. My dad and his girlfriend are always making a lot of noise, and so I usually turn the TV on to kind of drown the sounds out." Well, my heart so went out for him. This poor young man never had slept in a bed before. And it occurs to me, could we be living in a similar situation? Not literally that we've never slept in a bed before, but what have we never imagined would be possible for us before? Have we really been living our best lives or just the lives that we're used to? Are we just used to, metaphorically speaking, sleeping on our own sofas with the TV blaring? Maybe we're missing out on the good life. So, how do we start dreaming again? How do we start dreaming of the bigger life? How do we start dreaming of the opportunities we're missing or some of the parts of our lives that could be improved upon? How do we go beyond just asking for the missing hat and ask to have our grandson's leg healed? How do we start recognizing that God is infinite and that it's God's good pleasure to give us our biggest dreams? Well, of course, I have some ideas. First of all, we're not as used to using our imagination as when we were young. Daydreaming isn't just for kids. So, what would daydreaming be like for an adult? I think it could be some time thinking, contemplating, or even journaling about some direction we'd like to make in our lives. And let's make sure it includes a fun component. What activities would really give you a sense of freedom or play? What new thing or new idea or new way of being would make all the difference? Your imagination, your daydreams are a key to dreaming big. They can lead you to beyond your current comfort zone into something wonderful. But let's think for a minute just about this idea of a comfort zone. Some of us are very hesitant to get out of our comfortable sameness into something even bigger. You know, it's a part of what our ego does. Is everyone familiar with how our ego works? Well, it's a part of us into self-preservation big time. And so part of the job that our ego does is it doesn't want us to be disappointed. It doesn't want us to be fearful. It doesn't want anything bad to happen to us. And the way that it attempts to make sure that we're not troubled or hurt or alarmed is by keeping us right exactly where we are right now. The idea being that my life may not be perfect, but oh my God, what if I tried something new? The ego says that could be dangerous. Well, in olden times, I think it was dangerous, right? Back in cave person times, doing something risky would probably mean the death of you and maybe your family. But that's not true now. We can really be risk takers. Most of us can. Our lives are well ordered. Most of us are earning a decent living. We have a good family situation. We're not like my poor teenager who had never seen or used a bed before and who was used to loud arguing in his house all the time. At least most of us can imagine something better than that. And so I'm here to be a little bit of a risk-taking aficionado for you. I think you deserve it to take some minor risks, to dream big in order to start living a little larger, to have a little more fun in our lives, to have a little more opulence in our lives, to have a little more joy or peace or love in our lives. And to do that, we're going to get out of our comfort zone. And our imagination is one of the keys. What can you imagine that would be just wonderful? What can you imagine that would make life more loving? Maybe a new relationship or an improved relationship or mending a relationship that's been harmed in the past. So many opportunities for us to enjoy the good life if we're willing to stretch our imagination. But what if we are like that teenage boy who had never really couldn't imagine having his own room or sleeping in his own bed? What if that's us for having the bigger life, a life that we can't even imagine, a life that's larger and more loving and more precious to us than the one we have now? What if we can't even imagine it? Well, my second thought beyond just using our imagination is maybe to seek out a mentor. There are probably people that you really admire in your life, either people you know or people that you have access to. And I bet some of these people are living the dream in a way that you can't even quite imagine. What if you had a mentor that could lead you along the path of greater awareness of your good, being able to see you for who you really are and the assets that you have and the love that you can bring things to? You know, often we tend to minimize our own capabilities. Often we think that we're not much or can't do very much. Sometimes an outsider can see beyond that. Sometimes an outsider can mentor us into seeing our true greatness and also into illustrating some of the better ways of life that maybe we just can't even understand. It wasn't too long ago that my partner Daniel received a gift of some money. And we thought to ourselves, well, wouldn't it be nice to make an investment of some kind so that that money could grow and maybe be there for later in life when we wanted to buy something special or we would need it for a rainy day. But we didn't have any experience investing, right? We were like that kid on the couch. I have no idea about investing. And so we sought out a mentor, a financial planner that could help us make a good investment. So that's what I'm recommending for you. Well, and certainly if it's around your finances, I bet a financial advisor could help you. If it's about your love life, maybe a successful couple that you know could give you some tips and ideas for improving your relationships. If it's job related, if you're not really being used at your current job, if your capabilities are not being used, or if you're not being paid in according to some of the merits that you bring to your job, maybe a mentor could help you work through that. Maybe it's time for some kind of a change. Maybe it's time to get out of our comfort zone in order to find that better life that we so deserve. Well, today we explored a couple ideas. First of all, we recognize that the universe is unlimited, that it's great, God's good pleasure to give us the keys to the kingdom. But it's up to us to know whether we're just asking for a hat, or if we're asking to see some of our big dreams be realized. Another thing that we talked about is how to expand our ability to receive. How can we have, if our cup is running over, how can we get a bigger cup? And we talked about two ways of doing that. One is about daydreaming and imagining more. And the second thing was getting a mentor who already has more or can advise us about outcomes that we haven't even imagined. And so I hope we're going to learn to be big. And I would like to assign you a little bit of homework this week. What will you do this week to increase your capacity to receive more good? Or another way of looking at it is, what can you do to begin dreaming big. And I'd like to close today with sort of a prayer, but really more of an affirmation. And this lovely affirmation comes from Ernest Holmes in his book, Living the Science of Mind. And so, if you'd like, I'm going to read through this several times. The first time I'll read it through, but after that, maybe you'd like to repeat after me or even close your eyes just in meditation as I read it again. Good and more good is mine, and ever increasing good is mine. There is no limit to the good which is mine. Everywhere I go, I see this good. I feel it. I experience it. It crowds itself against me. It flows through me. It expresses itself in me, and it multiplies itself around me. Good and more good is mine. It is that dreaming big. It is that ability to have a bigger cup to run over. It is that magnificent part of our spirit that wishes to have the good life. And it is God's good pleasure to give it to us because good and more good is mine, and ever increasing good is mine. There is no limit to the good which is mine. Everywhere I go, I see this good, I feel it, I experience it. It crowds itself against me, it flows through me, it expresses itself in me, and it multiplies itself around me. Truly, good and more good is mine. And staying in this place of true abundance and with great gratitude, I release this prayer, I release this affirmation into that goodness that is God, that God that always says yes. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you so much for being here today. Certainly my pleasure to be with you. Goodbye for now.